So today we're going to talk about succession planning. It's a funny one. A lot of us in HR talk about it, and yet I have come across so few people who know anything about it. And it's important right now because of so much leadership shifts that are going on. And that's all coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams. This is the HR Hub. On this show, you get expert insight into anything related to HR. Please subscribe to the show or podcast to keep learning from my guests. So today, my guest is Dr. Nanette Miner. She's an author, consultant, and, importantly, a succession strategist. She talks about building our talent versus buying it. And when we're talking about succession planning, of course, we're talking about building it, but maybe we'll touch a little bit on the comparison with buying it. Hi, Nanette, how are you?
Great, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. So, as usual, I dive right in. Succession planning. Okay, quickly, what is it?
Quickly, not simply. Good, quickly. Quickly, in a short sentence, it's having a pipeline of ready and capable leaders, which sounds easy enough, but it's actually very complex because, first of all, the word pipeline means you need more than one person who's not necessarily promotion ready today, but in the pipeline, right? You're getting numerous people ready, and also ready in what way. Every business operates a little bit differently. Every industry is a little bit different. So you really have to think through what does ready mean in this organization? And then, what is capable? At what point do we determine that people are capable and then do the transition? And that's the hardest part, honestly. The getting people ready and capable is easier than doing the transition because a lot of people haven't thought through the psychological sides of that.
So where should an organization start in succession planning?
So the first thing you have to do, honestly, is figure out where you stand now. And with the pandemic and with the boomers leaving the organizations, a lot of organizations don't even know where they stand right now. Like, what is our risk? The first thing I say to all my clients is we have to determine if you're in a crisis situation right now. And that leads to what you talked about earlier. Do we have time to build people, or we're going to have to hire them from outside the organization, right? So baseline data. How many people in your organization are over the age of 50? Can you do, say, an anonymous survey and say, hey, on this group that I've just sent this email to, what's your idea for retirement? Is it 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? That'll give you an idea of how much time you have to get ready. You want to go to your senior leadership with the statistics on how many people have we had leave, generally over the age of 50, because a lot of Gen Xers are getting are retiring now as well. It's not just the boomers, but over the age of 60 or over the age of 50, you want to be armed with data if and when your senior leaders come to you and say, hey, you need to put together the succession plan. I want HR people to know enough to push back and go, wait a minute, before we even start the succession plan, we have to figure out where we are now. It's like having a map for your trip, right? I want to get from here to the other coast. How do I do that? There's a lot of ways I can do that. So what's the map? The map is, where do we stand right now? Are we in a crisis situation? If we are, we don't have time to do development of people. We're still going to do a succession plan, but it's not going to include developing our people for the immediate future. We definitely should get prepared for the future. But if we have to replace people in 3 years and we have not done anything to get people leadership ready, we don't have time.
One quick question. How much time do you need?
So ideally, 10 years.
Whoa.
You can do it quickly in 5 years. It's just leadership is a behavior, and it's hard to teach a behavior, right? We always talk about leadership skills, but if you were to make a list of the skills and stand back and look at them, you'd be like, oh, these are actually behaviors. These are actually characteristics and mindsets. And that takes a long time to develop in someone. It has to be reinforced over and over. It has to be modeled by the people who are currently in the leadership positions. And that's why, again, you have to start with where do we stand right now? What is a leader in this organization? And is that the kind of person we want to replicate? Are those the qualities we want to replicate? Then we know if we do have time to develop someone, what we're trying to develop. And actually, I think it's important too if you're going to hire from outside, because you'll be able to hire someone that you know will fit in the organization if you've defined what a leader looks like in this organization. And that's going to be different for every organization. So the two things I always start clients with is give me all your HRIS data. I want to know where you stand right now, so I know if to what degree I'm going to help you and where we have to start. And then secondly, tell me what a leader looks like in this organization. And that is often 2-3 hour conversation. Sometimes it's like, well, everybody throw out some words and then let's start digging down. Like, how would I recognize that? How do I know what open-minded is or forward thinking is? What? How do you know that? How do I teach that if we don't define it?
So you focus on, say, the over 50s, but and this may get to an important point that you just have to decide where your focus is going to be, because you can't focus on everyone. However, do you have to make that conscious decision around in succession planning of what positions you're going to focus on and what age ranges? But I mean, someone who's 35 could get hit by a bus.
Right.
And
so, yes. And
okay.
When I say the 10 years, it's because I'm looking at younger generations and I want them to be prepared by their late 30s or early 40s or something. Most companies, and show me a company that doesn't do this, promote people first and then go, okay, now we're going to teach you all these leadership skills that we didn't bother to teach you, even though you've worked here for 15 years. But, we didn't want to take a chance on getting you prepared for this role first. So we promoted you first. And now we want you to take on functional responsibilities and also change your behavior. It's mean and it's almost impossible. And we never evaluate people on behavior. We evaluate them on functional responsibilities. So if push comes to shove and you're a newly appointed leader, where are you going to put your efforts? Right? So you see my banner back here. My philosophy is leadership from day one. Let's get everybody developing their leadership competencies the minute they walk in the door, and then it'll shake its way out, as they get older and find what they like to do in the organization. And some people will like to lead others and some won't. To get a 50-year-old prepared is going to be more of a mentoring situation. It's going to be less training and more like follow this person around, be joined at the hip. You're going to have to absorb everything you need to know in 3 years.
Is there potentially a lot of risk in this? Like, is it worth the investment? Like leadership from day one, for example, you invest all this money in creating leadership skills so that in the future you've got some leadership ready people, and yet people are leaving organizations all the time, and there's considerable risk that you're going to put a lot of effort into somebody who's just going to walk out the door.
I say no, but you're right. People are going to leave. The rationale behind you having a pipeline of people is that it's okay if people leave. You don't go, oh, look what he did to us. No, what are we going to do? You're in that position if you don't have a pipeline. But if you're doing leadership development of everyone, you're more desirable as an employer, because younger people today want to know that they have a future, right? They don't want jobs, they want careers, and if they want security. So if you can offer them this, look, we're going to have 5, 10, 15 years to get you prepared, they're going to be attracted to your organization. It helps with retention, because I personally believe that people leave companies because they get bored, because you're not giving them professional development, and they look around and they go, well, I guess I'll have to go somewhere else if I want to learn something new. And also we have this concept of leadership as a hierarchy. So if they look around and go, well, I'm in a department of 8 and there's still only one manager, we all can't be the manager. Clearly, I have better chances if I go somewhere else. I mean, it's just, a lot of it's just how we've patterned organizations lately. So the other point I want to make is stop thinking of leadership development as a class, because in my opinion, it's not. It's discussions, it's coaching, it's mentoring, it's one of the things I always number one thing I tell clients or suggest to clients, if you can't do anything else, start sending out articles that you've pre-read and you're like, oh, this would be great if everybody knew this. I want everybody to read this article. I've emailed it to you, and you have to give them 3 questions to ponder while they're reading it. That's the kind, you're priming the pump, right? That's somebody who's forward thinking, understanding risk, understanding strategy. So it's not a class, but you're getting them to think more critically because you sent them this article and you're asking them to respond. So A, I say send an article. It has to have 3 questions. And then B, preferably, than say, okay, and on a Tuesday afternoon, we're all going to get together from 4 to 5 and talk about this.
I don't know if you've answered this question. You've kind of said that everybody might be a potential successor, but when you're advising clients, how do you help them understand who might be a potential successor? And also, I would like in your answer there to address bias, because, a 50 or 60-year-old man might want to promote the 50-year-old man when, there's some young up-and-coming female maybe that would be great. So, was that question too long? Should I abbreviate? Why not?
Nope,
You got it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, go.
So I think my methodology gets rid of the bias.
Okay.
Because if you're developing everybody, you're not picking and choosing, right? You're just giving everybody the ability to be promoted to leadership if they choose to. And then, of course, there's HR's role in that as well, is to keep the overview of the whole organization. You need to know where your vision and your goals are. Like what you just said is, a 60-year-old man replacing themselves with somebody who looks just like them. Big mistake, because what's happening today and what's successful today is not what's going to help this organization 3, 5, 10 years down the road, right? So you have to always have that forward vision. What skills are we going to need in 10 years? And potentially that person who's 3 years behind you in age doesn't have any better skills than you do. So I always caution them, it's not replacement leaders, it's future leaders.
So once you have some potential successors, then what should you do?
So I've got to switch that around. It's what do you do in order to get the successors? Because that's the harder part.
Okay.
It's almost an ecosystem of, like, how do you separate any of these things, right? But to get yourself a pipeline of leaders, you want career paths so people know where they are going in the organization and what it takes for them to get there. You want to do assessments to see if people have the leadership qualities that you want replicated in your organization. You have to do performance appraisals where you ask folks, what are your goals? Is it this department? Is it another department? Is there someplace else in this organization that you find fascinating and you'd like to move there? You have to let people do lateral moves. You should require people to do lateral moves, in my opinion. If you're going to be a leader in like the C-suite, you have to know more than your own department. And what we've done terribly, and I'm part of that problem, is for 30, 40 years, we have trained people in silos. So if you enter a company in finance and you're lucky enough to get more professional development, I can guarantee you it's only in finance and you're only taking classes with other finance people. So you don't know how the organization runs. You don't even have resources in the organization to be able to go to HR or to research or to operations and go, hey, help me think this through. I want to sign this contract, but I don't know, is that going to affect people? Is that going to affect operations? We have not created ecosystems in our organizations at all. Everybody's fiefdom. If you do like coaching and mentoring, if you do all of these things in preparation, you're going to have a ready pipeline of successors. Like, I think people ask the wrong questions when they're interviewing for leadership. They're still saying, what was your P&L? And how many people did you like? They're asking about skills and achievements, and they're not asking, how do you behave when people question your decision? Are you a person who asks for more data and questions? Or are you a person who says, well, I'm the boss and that's why? I have actually I think it's on our website, there's a downloadable document of 10 questions to ask to interview for leadership, because we just don't ask the right questions when we're interviewing from outside. Is this person going to fit in this organization? Do they have what we consider to be leadership qualities? Because at a leadership level, you're not doing the work.
And once you have a succession plan, how often, and what does it look like, and how often should you revisit it?
So it looks like more than one person. It's not a replacement leader. It's a pipeline of ready and capable leaders. So it looks like more than one person. You should revisit it at least once a year in terms of the people that you have in your pipeline. So a big question that comes up often is, should we be transparent about this, or should this all be a secretive thing? I have a friend who owns a business, and she says, I tell my folks I'm transparent, but I have the ability to change my mind, or I reserve the ability to change my mind because circumstances change. But ideally, you want everyone to know, look, you're in this development process, we do see a future for you, maybe not in this department, but somewhere else in this organization, because we're raising a leader. So you don't have to necessarily keep going up in the hierarchy in this department, right? You could be a leader in a different department. Is that something you aspire to? Is that something you still aspire to? Is there something you would like to learn that we've overlooked? Would you like to expand your contribution to the organization? Like maybe you're the person who saw AI a year ago and you're like, why are we not doing this? Like I should be heading up the AI department. Oh, okay. Like you can't just, as the current leaders, presume where people are going to slot in. Just give them the competencies and the opportunity, and then you're holding performance appraisals once a year, hopefully more than that, but you should be holding the pipeline discussion basically at the same time. Like, hey, you're making great progress. Here's a great tip too. Send your folks out to volunteer. Like I always say, join your board of your professional association, because professional associations give back so much and people don't utilize them enough, right? So I would say if I thought, okay, you've hit all our metrics here, but I don't really have any place to promote you yet, I want you to go out and get a board position on, community, the chamber, professional association, like expand your horizons elsewhere. You're going to meet people who are going to teach you other things outside of this organization. You're going to build relationships outside of this organization, and that's still going to build your leadership skills.
How do you know when your succession planning has been, like all the effort they put into this and the discussions and whatnot? How do you know when it's successful?
So the metrics that I concentrate on are recruitment. Did that get easier? Did we lower our recruitment costs because we look like an attractive organization that has a plan for your future? We've thought this through. Retention. Here's a big hiccup. I tell the clients all the time. I say one of the HRI data points I ask for is, what's your typical churn? Where do people fall out of the organization? So when I normally work with construction industry folks, and I have now learned, after asking for all this data from numerous companies, I have realized that industry turns over at year 2 and year 5, basically. But if you can keep them past year 5, you'll keep them forever, basically. You'll at least keep them for the next 15 years, right? So I wouldn't put on a whole lot of development gas until I got them past whatever that churn point is, because otherwise it's like, I like to use the image of the ocean, right? I can't get past where the waves are breaking, right? But I need to get you out there to be a leader. So if we can get people past where the waves are breaking, now we can really put on the gas of developing their leadership skills. So it's recruitment, it's retention, it's promotions from within, not necessarily in a hierarchy. We keep thinking of promotions as being, I got to be the next up, whatever the next up is in this department. Get people to think more broadly. Where would you like to apply your skills? I know what skills you have. I think you'd be great in that department, which apparently is what they did to me when I was 25 years old. Is there continuity in how the business is being run? Is there camaraderie? Is it a one for all for one? Because we're not fiefdoms. We're not fighting for resources. We're just all a tight group of leaders. If you have to hire from the outside, is that person successful? Have you prepared them adequately to know what that is expected of a leader in this organization? Did you screen them so that you at least knew that they were going to fit the culture and had the same values and the same goals? Because a lot of times leaders will come in from outside with their own way, right? Which, again, because somebody else raised them, somebody else did leadership on day one. So, this is not how I would do it. Let me change everything at this company, which, either causes other people to leave because I don't want to make the changes. This is, this person's dragging us down and I'm not on board with it, so I'm going to leave. Or we end up asking that new leader to leave. Like, there's a lot of research that CEOs that come in from outside organizations often flame out in 18 months because they want to change too much and the board stops them, or the employees stop them, or the place just stops functioning. Like, remember when I forget his name, but there was a fellow probably 10 years ago who became the new CEO of JCPenney, and he said, we're not going to do sales anymore. And everybody was like, what? Sales is how retail works. Like, it might have been an inspirational idea, but it didn't fly. And he left that job so quickly because he was asking this whole organization to change. And it doesn't have to be the whole organization. It could just be your department.
Here's the surprise question that I'm going to start trying to ask. Okay. Is there some aspect in this conversation that we've had so far in the last very short time we have left Is there something we should have talked about, but we didn't?
Yeah, I'll say the psychology, the thing that I started with at the beginning that I alluded to. I work with small business owners who are the owner founders of their organization. So this may not be true in bigger organizations, but it probably is, because again, it's this ownership mentality that no one can do it as well as I can. I got to stay here until the very last moment to make sure everything's done correctly. So one of the best practices, which I did not come up with, but research has shown, is that a good transition takes 3 years. And you should be working in duality. It shouldn't be like 3 years from now, Andrea is going to take my job. It should be Andrea and I are now attached at the hip. And first, I'm going to show her the functional responsibilities that I, in this role, take on. And that doesn't mean you're not also still doing your job, but now part of your day is spent, or week is spent with me, right? I'm going to introduce her to all the relationships she needs to know. We're going to go through 2 or 3 cycles of the business cycle so she can see where the ups and the downs are, what did the critical decisions I have to make. How often do you see organizations where one person leaves and then they post for the job? It's insane. And this new person upsets the apple cart, probably because they don't have any continuity. They don't have any context for what they're stepping into. So they're like, okay, well, I guess it's a blank slate, so I'll just start from the beginning. So really a good transition, especially if you're talking CEO level, it's like a 3-year transition where you're working together. And then they even say for CEOs who, like, if it's an owner founder, don't make them leave the company, just give them a different office. They have to get out of the CEO office so that employees make like a logical transition that this is the new person. But generally, by the time you make that switch, they've seen that other person so many times, and sometimes they're making decisions and they're making announcements, and sometimes it's the CEO, and they see that the CEO is making this transition and handing things off, and then get comfortable with it, and then put the CEO in like some kind of advisory or mentorship capacity for like another year where they're not making any of the decisions, but they didn't just leave, because that's a psychological nightmare for them. And a lot of times, a CEO owner founder will be like, okay, and then I'm going to get on my boat and I'm going to be gone for a year. Well, you also don't, that's risky too. You don't want them gone for a year, because what if you do need them?
Okay. How can someone reach you?
So the easiest thing is to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Nanette Miner there, so you don't have to wade through a lot of profiles. The website is Succession Planning Pro with hyphens in between. So succession-planning-pro. And if you scroll down about halfway down the homepage, there's actually a button that says HR. Click here. So there's a whole section for HR folks.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was great. Well, thanks, Nanette. That was useful. I'm thinking about the fact that we're just going to have to pick when it comes to succession planning, because we cannot focus on every single position there is out there. Nanette talked a little bit about performance appraisals or performance planning, and I did an episode on that recently, and the link to that's right here. But otherwise, thanks for watching out there. We'll see you next time when I talk with another Insightful guest.